obviously Man City are part of a multi-club ownership group, and there's many more that are springing up and emerging. I mean, what kind of effect is that model having on recruitment? Because if you just look at the players that Man City could bring in, if it's just for their first team, that's a tiny, tiny pool of the market. But if they've got all these other clubs and they're using like a player trading model, it opens up to a lot more
Mm.
opportunities. So yeah, just a little bit around kind of MCOs, if you can, and how you think about them and how they've affected kind of recruitment strategies.
Yeah, no. So I've got a kind of mixed relationship with them, right? So part of me really likes them.
Mm.
So if you get the if you get the vertical integration aspect of it right. So I keep thinking the one I always think of that I really like is the whole and if you go into Germany and Austria, there's a different narrative. But from a distance, I look and go, Liefering, Salzburg, Leipzig, B team, Leipzig, that kind of chain.
Yeah.
They've got fairly close geographic proximity. The hierarchical steps between the levels are quite nicely organised.
Mm.
The registration rules allow you to deregister and re-register and move players around a little bit, B team, first team, etc., which is great for like their exposure and everything else. Um, so you can see how you could start to create your own kind of vertically integrated pipeline of talent where you take a player into Leaf. I'm going to use Austrian Leaf. I've got no relationship, by the way, with these people. I'm just using them
Mm.
for the story. But you can take a player into Leafering at 17. You can give them game time exposure. You can train them in your model. You can test them. You can understand a lot of the unknowns that you can't make them unknown. You can't make the unknowns known until they're your player.
Yeah.
You can deal with a lot of that when it's earlier and cheaper in that stage of the hierarchy, and then progress them up to the next stage of development. And that development journey can carry on all the way through. Even if the clubs are kind of independently run, if they've got the same kind of ideas, they can have a continuous kind of development plan and pathway for the player, which I think is fantastic. For the player, think of it purely from a player's point of view. It's a really cool thing. You've got an opportunity. You've got a structured development model. You've got people at each level in the hierarchy looking at the level below. There's lots of positives to that kind of construct, I think, for a player. For the clubs themselves, that vertical integration also means actually you may be less vulnerable to the kind of extremes of the transfer market.
Yeah.
Because you've got a very strong pipeline of talent that you can leverage in all kinds of different ways, and you can trade internally, right? So you can do kind of deals where you move a guy from Salzburg to Leipzig, and lots of players have made that move. Maybe the market rate for that move is 40 million, but they do it in a different way, right?
Yeah.
And as clubs become more regulated, managing some of that margin could be a way for smaller clubs with smaller budgets to maybe punch above their weight a little bit because they can take that off the table and put it into their own team. Things like that. So I really like that. That aspect of MCO, I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
The bit what do I not like? So the bit I don't like is when I think there's an element to it as a football person. I think of myself as a football person now too. There's a kind of identity politics type aspect to it that I find difficult, where clubs want to be autonomous. They've all got their own fans. Everyone wants their club to go and do the best it can for itself and to win. And to be thought of as part of a value chain is not going to get anyone happy, right? It's not going to arouse anybody. So, my club is now a feeder for another, instead of being a thing on its own with its own ambition, its own vision, and its own drive. So, if you're immediately in that value chain, you're probably skewed towards a different profile of player. Maybe your squad is younger now, so the balance that we talked about before skews more towards the developmental age ranges. So that you have fewer senior players, which means your immediate ability to go and win is reduced. Things like this. Why would you want that? The reverse is also true, right? You can see very high quality players going into partner clubs, MCO partner clubs, with big parent clubs that elevate the level of those teams as well. So it doesn't always have to be something that needs to be handled with hostility. I think it can also be something that's very productive. But I guess it really depends on the cultures, whether they fit together. But there is a whole element to it, this kind of human trafficking type aspect to it, which I find a little uneasy. But I think if you've got good people in the clubs and they all want the best for the whole and for each individual entity, I think you can all kind of coexist quite happily. I just think football clubs generally are quite complex psychological environments. So the conditions to get that kind of collaboration to happen are quite hard to create. So you need fantastic leadership. You need really visionary people who can get people to engage and stay engaged in a project. But very easy to eat them alive with a kind of short-term micro view of your particular entity in the overall system. So there's like lots of things in life, right? I mean, I was talking to someone the other day about one of my clients before I was in football at the same time, but one of my non-football clients, they used me for an architecture project, a data architecture project. And one of my slides, I actually went and took a photograph of the fridge. So I went into the canteen area, the kind of coffee making area, and there's a sort of 7-8 foot fridge, and it was full of milk with people's names on. That was all out of date and stinking. And I was like, if we can't share milk, how the hell do we share infrastructure and resources? And how are we going to architect this thing? If everyone's going to want that one of their own, it's going to look like the fridge, So, some cultures are going to be more conducive to this kind of collaboration than others. But yeah, so I think that's just an interesting story, right?